The moment I sat down at the head of the table for the Preston family's formal dinner, my husband's new executive assistant marched over and slapped me across the face. "No class," she sneered. I slapped her right back. Then I turned my silent gaze to my husband. He instantly panicked. I had just taken my seat at the head of the grand mahogany table in the Preston family estate's main dining room in Greenwich, Connecticut, when Chloe rushed toward me and struck me. The force of her palm was shocking, and the sharp crack of the impact silenced the entire room. Around the circular table, a dozen of the Preston relatives stared, frozen. Some were mid-sip from their crystal wine glasses. Others were just about to sit, their polite smiles now plastered stiffly on their faces. Chloe stood before me, dressed in a chic, pale beige designer power suit, the corporate ID for Preston Industries clipped to her chest. She was Caleb's new executive assistant, hired 3 months ago in Manhattan, and in that time, she had become the most frequent non-family visitor to the Connecticut estate. After hitting me, her voice was unnervingly steady. "Mrs. Preston, even as Caleb's wife, you cannot just disregard decorum. The head of the table is reserved for the family elders, not for you to take as you please." I raised a hand to my cheek, which stung with a fiery heat. Caleb was standing just a few feet behind her, originally on a phone call. Hearing the commotion, he had turned. His eyes went from my face to the seat I occupied, then to Chloe's still-raised hand. The color drained from his face. I did not cry. I did not ask him why. I simply stood up and, with a swift backhand, returned the slap to Chloe's face. The blow snapped her head to the side, and she stumbled against the back of an adjacent chair, her eyes instantly welling with red. I looked at her, my voice low but firm. "First, Grandmother Catherine herself asked me to sit here before she passed. Second, you are not a Preston. And third, if you ever dare to lay a hand on me again, I will not stop at just one slap." Chloe clutched her face, looking as if she had suffered the world's greatest injustice. "Caleb," she whimpered, managing only his name before he was already striding over. I thought he would look at the red mark on my face first. But his first words were, "Eleanor, why did you hit her?" The expressions of the relatives around the table instantly came back to life. Someone muttered, "She has always been so impulsive, that one." Others looked at Chloe with a mixture of pity and sympathy. Chloe's tears flowed right on cue. "Caleb, I was just worried she was in the wrong seat and would embarrass the elders. I did not think she would get so angry." A small, humorless laugh escaped me. The movement pulled at the bruised skin on my cheek, the pain a sharp reminder of reality. I turned to Caleb. "You also think I was in the wrong?" Caleb's mouth opened, but he did not answer immediately. That was the answer. Slowly, I began to twist the diamond wedding band off my left ring finger. I had worn that ring for 3 years. The inside was engraved with his initials. When we were first married, he had slipped it on my finger himself, promising, "The position of Mrs. Preston is yours and yours alone." I placed the ring on the dark, leather-bound estate ledger that lay on the table. That ledger was given to me by Grandmother Catherine when she was still alive. It contained everything: the Greenwich Estate's formal dinners, charity gala arrangements, social obligations, the elders' medication schedules, and private loans to relatives. For 3 years, no one in the Preston family ever asked how I managed it all. They just grew accustomed to every dinner being perfectly elegant, every holiday gift being thoughtful and timely, every relative's birthday being remembered with a present, and every elder being accompanied to their specialist appointments in Manhattan. They thought it was the Preston family's inherent East Coast prestige. In reality, most of it was me, holding everything together behind the scenes. I picked up the ledger. My voice was quiet, but it landed like a blade on the tabletop. "Since I have no class, I will not be managing this dinner tonight." My mother-in-law, Margaret, was the first to frown. "Eleanor, what kind of scene are you making? All our family is here. Must you air our dirty laundry for everyone to see?" I looked at her. 3 years ago, you told me the wife of the Preston heir must be gracious and capable. So for 3 years, for every single dinner at this estate, I finalized the menu 3 days in advance, arranged the seating chart a day before, personally supervised the private chefs, and settled the final bill afterward. I paused. "Today, Miss Chloe says I have no class." Margaret's face tightened. "What is that supposed to mean? What kind of attitude is that?" I did not engage with her. I clutched the ledger to my chest and turned to leave. Suddenly, Chloe reached out to block my path. "Mrs. Preston, that ledger belongs to the Preston family. You cannot just take it." I stopped and turned back to her. "Do you even know what is in here?" She froze. I took a step closer. You do not even know that Grandmother Catherine was allergic to shellfish, that Uncle Ben's granddaughter has a severe peanut allergy, or that Aunt Carol, a widow in recovery, does not drink alcohol at celebratory events. You know nothing, yet you lecture me about the family ledger? Chloe's face went pale. The expressions on several of the relatives shifted. Finally, Caleb spoke. Eleanor, put the ledger down. We can talk about this at home. I looked at him, and for the first time, this man felt like a complete stranger. It was not that he did not know how important this ledger was. He just never imagined I would actually take it away today. I glanced down at the wedding ring on the table. Caleb, a moment ago, you asked me why I hit her. I looked up at him. Now I will tell you. Because she slapped my face, and she stomped on my position. And you, by your silence, allowed it. I did not, he started, his jaw tightening. We will see when the accounts are settled. With that, I walked out of the dining room. No one dared to follow. It was not until I reached the massive oak front doors of the estate that Arthur, the longtime estate manager, came jogging out from the kitchen wing. He had been with the family for years, and was the one person who truly knew how I had held this house together. He was still holding his tablet, his eyes red. Mrs. Preston, your face. I shook my head. Arthur, the final payment for the catering tonight? It has not been settled, has it? Arthur paused. No, ma'am. You always handle the wire transfers after the dinner. I took out my phone and, right in front of him, opened my mobile banking app. The estate's formal dinner account, pharmacy auto debits, landscaping maintenance, staff stipends, relatives' holiday trust funds, a total of 7 automatic transfers. One by one, I tapped and canceled each of them. Arthur watched my hand, his voice trembling. Mrs. Preston, are you really not managing it anymore? I closed the final window. From today on, whoever sits at the head of the table pays the bill. As I walked out of the Preston estate, the crisp Connecticut wind stung the handprint on my face. But clearer than the pain was the liberating realization that I no longer wanted to hold up a facade for anyone. Behind me, the dining room erupted into chaos. I heard the clatter of a toppled glass, someone shouting Caleb's name, and another voice asking who was going to pay the Michelin-starred catering bill. I did not look back. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Caleb. Don't be impulsive. Wait for me at home. I read it and immediately shut off the screen. 5 minutes later, the caterer's call went through to the Preston estate. The bill for that 28-course tasting menu was $28,600. I had always been the one to pay it, but not tonight. When I returned to our Tribeca penthouse, the apartment was silent. This was the home Caleb and I had lived in since we married. I had chosen the living room sofa, I had replaced the dining table, and I had nurtured every single plant on the terrace. For 3 years, this place had felt like a home. But starting tonight, it just looked like an empty shell filled with old habits. I went to the master bathroom first and washed my face. In the mirror, the faint imprint of fingers was still visible on my left cheek. Chloe had hit me with intent. It was a deliberate power play, not an accident. I took out some ointment and gently applied it. My phone had not stopped buzzing since I had left the estate. My mother-in-law had called 8 times, Caleb 12. The family group chat was flooded with over 99 new messages. I tapped into it. Margaret had sent a long voice message. I did not listen, just used the audio-to-text conversion. Eleanor, it was a family dinner. To make a scene in front of so many people, hitting Chloe and taking the ledger, it was so childish. Chloe is young and a bit rash, but as Mrs. Preston, you should have some grace and tolerance. Below that was a message from Uncle Ben's wife. We are all family. Why make things so ugly? Cousin Sarah's husband added, Chloe is an outsider, yes, but she works for Caleb. Eleanor, you were definitely too impulsive today. Looking at those lines, I felt a sudden, bitter amusement. When I was the one being slapped, they were all silent. The moment I fought back, they all woke up. I did not reply immediately. I opened my laptop and pulled up a folder from my cloud drive. The folder's name was simple, Preston Expenses. Inside were 12 subfolders. Estate dinners, gifts and holidays, medical, staff and drivers, relative loans, temporary aid, formal wear, funerals, social functions, repairs, Margaret's private transfers. Every single transaction had a screenshot. It was not that I was being sneaky. My mother had taught me from a young age that it was fine to spend money. But you must always keep the books clear. The first year of our marriage, Caleb would come home from his Wall Street office exhausted in the early hours of the morning. I took care of his grandmother, dealt with the relatives, and handled a massive leak in the Greenwich Estate's slate roof. He would hold my hand and say, "Eleanor, I do not know what I would do without you." Back then, I thought that between a husband and wife, you did not need to count every penny. I learned later that the person who does not count is the one who ends up getting taken for everything. The sound of the deadbolt turning broke the silence. Caleb was home. He walked in, still in his tailored overcoat, his brow furrowed. "Eleanor, you really went too far today." I remained on the sofa. Which part was too far? He was taken aback. I answered for him. Was it that I should not have sat in the head seat? Or that I should not have hit her back? Or that I should not have taken the ledger? Caleb ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. "Chloe was wrong to hit you, and I will make her apologize. But for you to cause such a scene in front of all our relatives, Mom lost face, and the whole Preston family lost face." I looked up at him. "When she slapped me, did the Preston family have any face to lose?" He fell silent for a moment. "She is new to the family. She does not understand these customs." "She does not understand, and you do not either?" At that, the atmosphere in the room turned frigid. The look in Caleb's eyes shifted. I pushed the leather-bound ledger across the glass coffee table. "Caleb, do you know why I was allowed to sit in the head seat?" He did not answer. I opened the ledger to the first page. The page was filled with Grandmother Catherine's handwriting, old-fashioned but steady. "Eleanor holds the ledger. The ledger, holder takes the head seat." This was written when she was still alive. It was not a will, not a division of property. It was simply the rule of the house. Whoever manages the family accounts sits at the head of the table. Caleb stared at those words, his throat moving. You knew this," I said. "Your mother knew this. Uncle Ben and Uncle Stephen both knew this. The only one who did not know was Chloe." I closed the ledger. But why did someone who did not know dare to slap me? A flicker of panic crossed Caleb's eyes. "I did not tell her to do that. But you made her believe she could." His face hardened. "Eleanor, are you determined to blow this one small thing out of proportion?" Small thing? My heart felt as though it had been cut by something tiny but incredibly deep. I picked up my phone and opened the first screenshot. Last month, the memorial dinner for Grandmother Catherine. $42,300. I paid for it. Second, your mother lost at bridge at the country club and was afraid you would find out. She asked me to wire her $25,000 to cover her debt. I did it. Third, Uncle Ben's son needed $30,000 for a condo down payment in Brooklyn. He said he would pay it back in 2 months. It has been 6. Fourth, your cousin's wedding dress for her Hampton's wedding. She said that coming from Mrs. Preston, it would mean more, so she had me front the $12,600. I swiped through the images, one after another. With each one, the color drained further from Caleb's face. "Why? Why did you never tell me any of this?" I looked at him. I did. He frowned. I reminded him. "Last May, you were in Aspen for a tech summit. I sent you a message saying the estate's expenses for the month were getting out of hand and asked if we could review the books together. You replied, 'You are in charge of household matters. I trust you.'" Caleb pulled out his phone, as if to check. I pushed the screenshot right in front of him. The message was still there. "You trust me," I repeated. My voice flat. "You trusted me for 3 years? And now you let your assistant slap me for not following the rules?" His breathing grew heavy. "Eleanor, that is not what I meant." I did not respond, because it was too late. My mother-in-law's call came through again. This time, I answered and put it on speaker. Margaret's voice was sharp. "Eleanor, what is going on with the caterer? They are saying the final bill has not been paid. Wire the money right now. Do not let us become a laughingstock among the family." Caleb stood beside me, hearing every word clearly. "Mom," I said calmly, "Chloe said I have no class. So I will not overstep my bounds. Tonight, whoever arranged the seating chart can pay the bill." Margaret was stunned for a few seconds, then her voice rose. "What are you talking about? Are you really going to haggle over the price of one dinner?" I laughed softly. $28,600 is not a small amount. You can have Miss Chloe transfer it." There was a moment of silence on the other end, and then I heard Chloe's meek, tearful voice. "Aunt Margaret, it is all my fault. I will contact Caleb's corporate finance department right now." I cut her off. "Miss Chloe, a family dinner is not a corporate expense. If you want to sit in a Preston seat, You had better learn a Preston's rules. Do not use company funds to clean up your own mess. Caleb's expression changed. Eleanor. I hung up the phone. The living room was silent again, just the two of us. He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. You never used to be like this. I put down my phone. Like what? He was silent. I answered for him. Before, I would have paid the bill. I would have cleaned up the mess. I would have covered for your mother's lies. I would have placated the relatives. I would have pretended not to see when you brought your assistant back to the family estate. I stood up and went to the drawer where we kept a backup American Express card. It was linked to all the recurring estate expenses. In front of Caleb, I took a pair of scissors and cut the metal card in half. Caleb, from tonight on, I am no longer cleaning up your family's messes. He was finally getting angry. What is it you really want? A divorce, I said. And before that, we settle the accounts. The expression on his face froze. Divorce? I did not explain further. There were still his clothes in the master bedroom, but I did not touch them. I only packed my documents, the ledger, my laptop, and a few changes of clothes into a suitcase. Caleb stood in the doorway, motionless. As I pulled the suitcase past him, he grabbed my wrist, his grip tight. Eleanor, just because of one slap? I looked down at his hand, then pried his fingers off one by one. Not because of the slap. I met his gaze. It is because when that slap landed, I finally saw clearly which side all of you were standing on. I dragged my suitcase out the door. Just before the private elevator doors closed, I saw Caleb still standing there. His phone was ringing. I heard Margaret's frantic voice on the other end. Caleb, the caterer brought people to the estate. The elevator doors shut completely. I leaned against the cool metal wall and let out a long, slow breath. The first bill was finally being collected. The next morning, Chloe posted on her Instagram. It was a carousel of photos. The first was a picture of her own red, swollen cheek. The second was the messy dining table at the Preston estate. The third was a caption, "Some positions do not belong to you just because you sit in them. It is a shame that as a mere assistant, I get hit for speaking the truth." She did not name me, but all the Preston relatives would understand. Half an hour later, I received a private text from Uncle Ben's wife. Eleanor, Chloe is just a young girl. Do not stoop to her level. You really did not look good hitting her yesterday. Uncle Ben also sent me a message. Bring the ledger back first. Do not air the family's problems in public. I read them, saved a screenshot of Chloe's post, and then replied to Uncle Ben. 3 p.m. this afternoon. I am coming to the estate to return an account. He replied quickly. What do you mean? I did not respond. That afternoon, I brought my laptop and a file folder back to the Connecticut estate. The main hall was full of people, even more than the night before. Chloe was there, sitting beside my mother-in-law, a light layer of foundation on her face, just thin enough to let the faint mark of the slap show through. Caleb sat next to the head of the table. That seat was empty. No one dared to sit there. When I walked in, Margaret shot me a cold look. So you know how to come back. I ignored her and placed the file folder on the table. The bill for last night's dinner was $28,600. The caterer has already called the estate. I am here today to lay the accounts bare. Chloe spoke softly. Mrs. Preston, you do not have to be like this. A family dinner is a family affair. Bringing money into it is so hurtful. I looked at her. You are right. She paused, confused. I pulled out a chair and sat down. So today, we are not talking about feelings. We are only talking about money. Someone in the hall cleared their throat. Uncle Ben frowned. Eleanor, do we really have to do this? Yes, Uncle, I said, my gaze steady. You have always been the best with numbers in the family. Today, I would like you to help me see if I have wronged the Prestons in any way. I opened the first file. In the last 3 years, the Preston estate has hosted 39 formal dinners. Of these, 7 were paid for by Caleb's corporate card, 4 by my mother-in-law's personal account, and 28 by my personal checking account. Margaret's face changed. What nonsense are you talking about? The money for the dinners was always arranged by Caleb. I pushed the transfer records in front of her. Mom, every time you told me Caleb was busy and asked me to front the money. Then, afterward, you would tell the relatives that it was all because of Caleb's generosity. I pulled up our chat history. Every message from Margaret was there, clear as day. Eleanor, do not tell Caleb about this one. He is under a lot of pressure at work. You are managing the books. Just advance it. Do not mention money in front of the family, it seems petty. Margaret reached for my phone. I pulled it back. This is my phone, not the ledger. You cannot just take it. Her face turned a shade of green. Chloe immediately rushed to support her. Aunt Margaret, do not be upset. Mrs. Preston is probably just feeling hurt. I glanced at Chloe. Miss Chloe, do not be in such a hurry. Your account is coming up. Her eyes flickered. I continued to the next section. Category 2. Private loans to relatives. Uncle Ben's family, $30,000. Uncle Stephen's family, $25,000. My cousin, $12,600. My other cousin, for his luxury car lease, $18,000. Several people in the hall grew restless. Uncle Ben's wife immediately said, "At the time, we were told the family trust was helping out collectively. We did not know it was your personal money." I nodded, which is why I am letting you know today. Uncle Ben picked up the bank statements and reviewed them, his expression growing more and more grim. He was the sharpest investment banker in the family. He could tell they were real. Why are all these transfers marked as family aid? Because Mom said that marking them as loans did not look good, I replied. Margaret finally lost her temper. Eleanor, what are you trying to do now? Are you expecting the relatives to pay you back? I looked at her. Of course. The room exploded. Some said I was crazy. Others that I had no sense of family loyalty. Someone else said that the Prestons had welcomed me into their elite circles, only for me to turn around and dredge up old debts. I waited until they had all finished. Then I produced a third file. There is one category that does not need to be repaid. The voices in the room quieted. The costs for Grandmother Catherine's private nursing care, medications, and follow-up visits in Manhattan, I said. I accept those. I paid for them willingly. I looked at Caleb. Because Grandmother Catherine was good to me. Caleb, who had been silent all this time, flinched at her name. I did not stop, but the rest of the money was either a loan or an advance. It needs to be cleared. Do not use family as a linen napkin to wipe your mouth and then complain that it is dirty. Chloe, her eyes red, suddenly spoke up. Mrs. Preston, by pressuring the relatives like this, you are making things very difficult for Caleb. I laughed. Miss Chloe, you have not even married into the Preston family, and you are already worried about making things difficult for him. Her face went white. I pulled out a purchase order from the file. The Maine lobster bisque for last night's dinner. You ordered it, did you not? Chloe was stunned. Yes. I ordered it for Aunt Margaret. 32 portions at $250 each. The order form totals $8,000. She nodded. That is the standard for the estate. I produced another handwritten receipt. I called the catering supplier this morning. They said what was delivered last night was not the imported lobster bisque. It was a cheap crawfish chowder. Total cost for 32 portions, $900. The entire hall fell completely silent. The look of victimhood on Chloe's face froze. Even Margaret was stunned. I placed the two documents side by side. Miss Chloe, where did the $7,100 difference go? She immediately looked at Caleb. Caleb, I do not know. I just forwarded the supplier's quote to Aunt Margaret. The payment did not come from you, so of course you can say you do not know, I said. But you sent the purchase order to Arthur. And you were the one who changed the supplier. Arthur walked in from the doorway, holding a stack of his own iPad receipts. Mrs. Preston is correct. The estate has always used a list of approved culinary vendors. Last month, Miss Chloe said Caleb had instructed her to take over procurement. I warned her that the menus left by Grandmother Catherine should not be changed arbitrarily. She said that now, Caleb makes the decisions for the Preston family. Chloe panicked. I never said that. Arthur gave her a look. Miss Chloe, you said it in the kitchen, in front of two of the catering staff. The two staff members, standing behind him, lowered their heads but did not deny it. Finally, Caleb spoke, his voice low. Chloe, what happened? Chloe's tears burst forth. Caleb, I was really just trying to help. I am new here. I do not know the estate's rules. I must have been scammed by the supplier. I looked at her. You do not know the rules, so you slapped me? She choked on her words. The relatives who had been defending her just moments ago now avoided her gaze. I closed the file. Last night, Miss Chloe said that some positions do not belong to you just because you sit in them. I stood up and looked at the empty head seat. Now I would like to ask, who are you? Someone who does not even know who pays for the meal to teach me about rules. No one spoke. Caleb looked at me. His expression a complex mix of emotions. Eleanor, you could have told me these things in private. I turned back to him. Last night, when I was slapped, you could have asked me, right then and there, if it hurt. His face went pale. I picked up the ledger. Today was just the first volume. Uncle Ben's head shot up. There is more? I looked at him. Yes. What the Preston family owes me is more than just dinner money. I turned and left. As I reached the door, Chloe cried out, Mrs. Preston, is it because you have disliked me from the start? Is that why you deliberately investigated me? I stopped. No, I said, turning to face her. It is because you put your hand on my face first. Only then did I remember that there are some accounts I can no longer hide for you. She froze, trembling. As I walked out of the estate, Caleb followed me. This time, he did not grab me. He just stood on the top step, his voice low and hoarse. Eleanor, how much more have you been hiding? I looked at him. I was not the one hiding it, I said. You were the one who never bothered to look. The true rules of the Preston family were not at the dining table. They were in the family's private archival library. On the third day, after the anniversary of Grandmother Catherine's passing each year, the family held a small, private memorial board meeting. No extravagant banquet, no outside guests. Only the direct family members would enter the library for a private moment of silence and the reading of her foundation letters, then have a cup of black coffee in the adjacent sitting room. Grandmother Catherine used to say that the Prestons could lose their fortune on Wall Street, but never their sense of propriety. For the past 3 years, I was the one who arranged this solemn event. This year, my mother-in-law did not inform me. I only found out from Arthur. He called me, his voice hushed. Mrs. Preston, Margaret has put Miss Chloe in charge of the gathering. She said you have been emotionally unstable lately and that it is not appropriate for you to enter the library. I was in the middle of reconciling accounts. Hearing this, my pen paused. What else did she say? Arthur hesitated. She said, the head seat, the ledger, they belong to the Preston family. If you know what is good for you, you will return them. I chuckled. Fine, I will be there tomorrow. The next morning, when I arrived at the estate, an espresso service was already set up outside the library. Chloe, dressed in a demure, elegant dress with her hair pinned up, was holding a seating chart and directing the staff. When she saw me, her expression faltered for a second before she put on a gentle smile. Mrs. Preston, you are here. Aunt Margaret said there are many people today, and since you are not feeling well, you do not need to come in. You can rest in the living room. I looked at the seating chart in her hand. Who told you to arrange this? She lifted her chin slightly. Aunt Margaret. Let me see it. She held it back. Mrs. Preston, this is a private family arrangement. I almost laughed out loud. An outside assistant, standing at the door of the Preston family's private archives, lecturing me about private family affairs. I did not try to snatch it. I simply walked around her and headed toward the heavy mahogany doors. Chloe panicked and reached out to block me. Mrs. Preston, please do not make this difficult for me. I stopped. Chloe, the first time you blocked me was in the dining room. The second time is here, at the door to the family's memorial library. I looked down at her hand. Are you sure you want to make it a third? Her hand flinched and slowly dropped to her side. Inside the library, the Preston elders were all present. My mother-in-law, Margaret, stood before the memorial display. Seeing me enter, her face immediately darkened. Who let you in? The Preston family's memorial gathering, I said. If the one who holds the ledger and sits at the head seat is absent, who will offer the first respects? Margaret sneered. Eleanor, you really think highly of yourself. The way you are fighting with Caleb now, you still have the nerve to stand before our ancestors? I did not argue with her. I took a document out of my bag and placed it beside the display. This is a notarized copy of the Prenuptial Family Affairs Trust Agreement from 3 years ago. Grandmother Catherine, Uncle Ben, and Arthur all signed as witnesses. Uncle Ben, sitting nearby, froze. He picked up the document, and as he read, his brow furrowed. The agreement was simple. It was not about corporate property or stock inheritance. It was a measure put in place by Grandmother Catherine when her health was failing, to ensure the estate would be managed. It clearly stated that I, the new daughter-in-law, would take over the family ledger and operating accounts. The agreement specified that all matters concerning the estate dinners, charity functions, medical care, and memorial gatherings were to be managed by Eleanor Preston. All expenses were to be recorded in the ledger, and the family could not replace the ledger holder without due cause. At the bottom were the signatures of Grandmother Catherine, Uncle Ben, and Arthur. Seeing the agreement, Margaret's face turned ugly. The old woman is gone. Are you really using this piece of paper to pressure us? Mom, yesterday you said I had no class. Today I brought the rules. And now you say I am pressuring you. She was speechless. Caleb walked in from outside. He clearly had not expected me. Chloe followed behind him, her eyes red. Caleb, I could not stop her. Caleb glanced at her but said nothing. I looked at him. Today's seating chart. Did you tell Chloe to change it? Caleb remained silent. Margaret spoke for him. I told her to change it. You have been causing so much turmoil in this family lately. I cannot have you sitting at the head of the table with that sour face. I nodded. Then let me ask you. In the seating chart Chloe arranged, why is Uncle Stephen placed ahead of Uncle Ben? Uncle Stephen paused. Uncle Ben's face immediately darkened. Within the Preston family, the hierarchy among the senior uncles and board members was always strictly observed. In a normal dinner it might be overlooked, but at a memorial board gathering, it was a direct insult. Chloe hastily explained, I saw that Uncle Stephen is older, so… You really know your rules, Uncle Ben said with a cold laugh. Chloe's eyes reddened further. I was just trying to help. I gestured to the list in her hand. And our cousin, whose husband passed away last year, is still in mourning and should not be seated near the main celebration table. You placed her at a table right next to the loud espresso and pastry bar. Were you trying to humiliate her? Our cousin's face went white. She shot a sharp look at Chloe. Chloe was completely flustered. I did not know about any of that. Exactly, I said. So what right do you have to be arranging the seating for the Preston family's memorial? The library fell into a dead silence. Margaret's face was a mixture of red and white. Finally, Caleb spoke. Chloe, you can go outside for now. Chloe looked up at him, her expression one of disbelief. Caleb, go, he said. His voice was not loud, but it was cold. Chloe bit her lip and ran out. I felt no satisfaction, because what chilled me was not her humiliation, but the fact that it took Caleb this long to say something. During the memorial, Uncle Ben suddenly said, Eleanor, what happened today? We did not have our facts straight. I did not accept his apology. I simply followed the rules Grandmother Catherine had left, rearranged the seating, changed the coffee mugs, removed the inappropriate pastries, and moved our cousin to a quieter table. By the time I had finished, it was nearly noon. As I was leaving the library, Caleb followed me out. You came prepared today with that agreement. I looked at him. I did. His eyes darkened. So, starting from the dinner, you plan to call out every single person in the family for an accounting. Not from the dinner, I said. It started the first time you let Chloe answer a call from my mother-in-law for me. His face froze. That was 2 months ago. I had been delivering medication to Margaret and called Caleb to ask if he would be home for dinner. Chloe answered. Caleb is in the shower, she had said. If it is a family matter, Mrs. Preston, you can tell me. I will pass it along. At that moment, I knew. He had already blurred the boundary. Caleb's voice was low. I had too much to drink at a work event in Manhattan that night. I know, I said, looking at him. You always have an excuse. You were just busy, just had too much to drink, just forgot. She just does not know the rules. I am just being too sensitive. I took a step back. Caleb, when you line up all those excuses, they form an answer. He looked at me, a flicker of genuine panic in his eyes. Eleanor, I never intended for her to replace you. I smiled, a thin, cold smile. But she was already standing at the door of our family's private archives, blocking my way. The words hit him like a slap. I turned to leave. Just then, my phone buzzed. Margaret had sent me an image message. It was a draft of divorce terms from her attorney. It stated that Eleanor Preston would voluntarily relinquish all rights to manage the Preston estate, would not seek reimbursement for any household expenses incurred during the marriage, would not interfere in Caleb Preston's personal life, and would leave with nothing. I stared at those last 4 words, leave with nothing. Then I saved the image to a new folder. I named it Margaret. Coerced, divorce evidence. It was her turn for an accounting. In the carriage house of the Preston estate, there was a small estate management office. It was where Grandmother Catherine used to store old ledgers and tax records. The room was small, with just an old mahogany desk, 2 leather chairs, and a row of steel filing cabinets. For the past 3 years, after every family event, I would sit here for a while to record the day's expenses into QuickBooks and the physical ledger. Arthur always said I was too meticulous. Mrs. Preston, he would say, the family is so large, they will not miss this small change. At the time, I would just smile. Whether they miss it is their business. Whether I record it is mine. Looking back now, I was glad I had been so clear. Otherwise, all my grievances today would have been dismissed with a simple, "You did it willingly." At 2 p.m., I met Arthur in the small management office. He came in carrying an old archival box. "Mrs. Preston, these are all the receipts I could find. Some were taken by Margaret, and some were replaced by Miss Chloe, but I kept digital copies of everything from the kitchen." I took the box. "Thank you, Arthur." His eyes were red. "Mrs. Preston, I have worked for the Prestons for almost 20 years. I have watched you struggle these past 3 years. After Grandmother Catherine passed, there has not been a single person in this family who genuinely cared for you." My fingers tightened. Grandmother Catherine. She was the only one in the Preston family who had truly treated me like family. When I married Caleb, everyone said I had married up. My family was from a modest academic background. My parents were retired professors with no corporate empire. Caleb was the CEO of Preston Industries, young, brilliant, and handsome. But what they did not know was that he was the one who had pursued the marriage. We met at university in Boston, and he chased me for 2 years. Before we got married, he took me to meet his grandmother. She held my hand and said, "This child has a steady heart. She can hold a family together." At the time, I thought holding a family together was a 2-person job. I only realized later that Caleb had just left me at home to do it alone, while he himself drifted further and further away. Arthur and I worked from 2 p.m. until 7 p.m. One by one, we verified every expense against my bank statements. In the past 3 years, Margaret had privately asked me for a total of $387,000. The reasons were varied: luxury spa memberships, covering country club bridge debts, gifts for socialite friends, helping other relatives, buying expensive watches for Caleb, and paying for Chloe's wardrobe and etiquette training. That last item made me stop. "Chloe's clothes?" Arthur sighed. "Margaret said to buy them. She said when Miss Chloe accompanied Caleb to high-profile charity galas, she could not look shabby and embarrass the family. When she asked you to wire the money, she said it was for your cousin's formal gown." I found the text log. Sure enough, Margaret had messaged me. "Eleanor, your cousin needs a designer gown for her engagement party. Wire me the money first. Do not let people think the Prestons are stingy." The amount was $12,600. The date was 2 months ago. That same night, Caleb had taken Chloe to a gala at the Met in New York. Chloe had worn a stunning champagne-colored designer gown, standing by his side in photos that were splashed across the society pages. I had asked him about it. He said it was a corporate requirement. So, the corporate required dress had been paid for by my personal checking account. I stared at the transfer screenshot and suddenly started to laugh. Arthur looked at me, concerned. "Mrs. Preston." I marked the screenshot in red. "It is nothing. Just my heart getting another layer colder." At 8 p.m., Caleb called. I answered. His voice was weary. "Where are you?" "The estate's management office." He was silent for a few seconds. "You are still going through the books?" "Yes." "Eleanor, do not be like this. Mom is getting older. She might not remember all these expenses clearly." I stopped writing. "Caleb, did you know that your mother used my money to buy a Met Gala gown for Chloe?" The line went completely silent. I continued. $12,600. The memo was cousin's engagement gown. His breathing became heavy. "I did not know." "Of course you did not know," I said. "You only knew that she looked appropriate that night, that she did not embarrass you standing by your side." After that, he was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "I will have Mom pay you back." I laughed. "Caleb, do you still think this is about money?" His voice was hoarse. "Then what is it about?" I looked at the ledger, at the sea of red circles. "It is about all of you using my efforts to buy your social favors, using my silence to maintain your corporate image, using my marriage to pave the way for someone else." I hung up. Arthur, standing nearby, whispered, "Mrs. Preston." "Miss Chloe is here." I looked up. Chloe was standing at the door of the management office. She had changed into a white cashmere knit dress. The red mark on her face now faded. She had lost her arrogance from the night before and instead looked fragile and pitiable. "Mrs. Preston, I would like to talk to you." I closed the ledger. "About what?" She came in and closed the door. "I know you do not like me, but Caleb and I truly just have a professional relationship." I looked at her. Her eyes flickered. I was impulsive that day. I did not reply. She bit her lip, her voice lowering. Mrs. Preston, do you know why Caleb let me get involved in family matters? I looked up. She seemed to have finally found something she thought could hurt me, because he said, "You are too cold." My hand holding the pen froze. Chloe continued. He said, "You do not fight for anything. You do not ask about anything, as if it does not matter to you whether he is in this marriage or not. He asked me to help because he wanted to see if you would care." I looked at her. "So he asked you to hit me?" She shook her head frantically. "No, Caleb would never. I just felt that you were sitting in the head seat, but you never cherished him." The words were soft, but venomous. I stood up. "Chloe, do you know why I never fought with you?" She did not speak. I walked over to her. Because a person is not a seat you can just snatch. And a marriage is not a country club where you can get a place just by pushing your way to the table. Her face went white. "You think Caleb letting you answer his calls, accompany him to galas, and enter the estate was him giving you a chance?" I looked at her. "The truth is, he was just being lazy." She was stunned. "He is lazy about dealing with his mother, lazy about drawing boundaries, and lazy about facing my disappointment. So he pushed you forward, to enjoy the illusion of being fought over by two women." The look in Chloe's eyes changed. She refused to believe it. "No, that is not it. Caleb is different with me." I smiled. "Then get him to marry you." Her face froze completely. I sat back down. "Get out. I need to continue with the accounts." She did not move. Suddenly, she reached for a stack of purchase orders on the desk. Arthur immediately blocked her. "Miss Chloe." In the scuffle, a few papers fluttered to the ground. I bent down to pick them up. One of them was a receipt for a security deposit she paid when she switched catering suppliers last month. The payee was not the supplier. It was her own personal checking account. The amount was $5,000. Her face instantly turned ashen. I looked at the paper, then slowly lifted my gaze. "Chloe, so it was not that you did not know the rules." I placed the receipt in my file folder. "You just knew too many of them." She took a step back. "Mrs. Preston, let me explain." I cut her off. "No need." I took out my phone, snapped a picture of the deposit receipt and said, "Tomorrow, at the family meeting, you can explain it to everyone." Tears streamed down her face. "Caleb will not let you humiliate me like this." I looked at her. "You are mistaken," I said. "Tomorrow, I am not going to humiliate you. I am going to show the Preston family that every bite of dignity they have enjoyed was paid for by someone else's tolerance." The family meeting the next day was initiated by my mother-in-law, Margaret. The location was again the main hall of the Greenwich estate. She probably thought that a larger crowd would intimidate me, so besides the core Preston relatives, she had also invited two well-respected distant elders who sat on the corporate board. She sat next to the head seat, her expression cold and hard. Chloe sat behind her, her eyes red and swollen as if she had not slept all night. Caleb sat on the other side. When he saw me enter, he immediately stood up. I did not look at him, and took an empty seat. Margaret pushed a legal document across the table. "Eleanor, these are the divorce terms drafted by our attorneys. You and Caleb have reached this point, so we will not stand in your way. But you are not to take a single thing from the Preston family." I picked it up. It was similar to the picture she had sent me, but with a few new clauses. Eleanor Preston voluntarily waives all claims to reimbursement for any family expenses paid during the marriage. Eleanor Preston shall no longer interfere in Preston family affairs in the capacity of the family ledger holder. Eleanor Preston admits to initiating the physical altercation with Chloe at the family dinner and will issue a public apology. Post-divorce, Eleanor Preston shall not disclose any internal Preston family matters or corporate finances to outside parties. I finished reading and put it down. "Mom, are you not missing a clause?" Margaret frowned. "What?" "That I should crawl out of Connecticut on my knees." Someone in the hall gasped. Margaret's face turned livid. "Eleanor, do not be sarcastic." I pulled another legal document out of my bag. I have had my attorney prepare one, too. Caleb looked at me. I pushed my file to the center of the table. "First, the Preston family will repay all non-voluntary advanced payments made from my personal accounts over the last 3 years, totaling $782,600. A detailed spreadsheet is attached. Second, Margaret Preston will return the funds obtained under false pretenses, totaling $387,000. Third, Chloe will repay the difference from the inflated dinner procurement costs and the private vendor kickback deposit, totaling $12,100, and issue a written apology to me for the physical assault, the slander on Instagram, and the libel in the family group chat. Fourth, Caleb and I will file for divorce in New York State, with marital assets to be divided according to legal procedure. The family affairs trust agreement for the Preston estate will be terminated upon the finalization of the divorce. I will return a copy of the ledger. The original will be sealed and held by the witnesses. After I finished, the hall was so quiet you could hear the espresso being poured. Margaret slammed her hand on the table. You are dreaming. I looked at her. Then I will see you in civil court. Her expression changed. Uncle Ben took the detailed spreadsheet and began to read. The more he read, the more silent he became. The distant board elders also leaned in to look. No one was calling me unreasonable anymore, because numbers do not cry or play the victim. Chloe could not sit still. Mrs. Preston, why must you push me into a corner like this? I am just an assistant. This money might not be much to you, but to me, I cut her off. When you slapped me, you did not act like just an assistant. Her face paled. Caleb spoke in a low voice. Chloe, stop talking. Chloe seemed to snap. Caleb, who was I doing it for? It was for you. Mrs. Preston has been so cold to you these past 3 years. How many times did you tell me you would rather be at the corporate office than go home to Tribeca? She does not care about you at all. Her words dropped like a bomb. Everyone turned to look at Caleb. His face was a mask of horror. When did I ever tell you to say these things in public? But it is the truth, Chloe cried. You said she would never get jealous, never make a scene, never even ask where you were going. You said you wanted to see if she even cared about you. So I… Enough. Caleb shot to his feet, his voice booming. Chloe flinched. I sat there, suddenly drained of even the energy to be sarcastic. So my guess was right. He was testing me. A man in his mid-30s, a corporate CEO, and his way of handling his marriage was to let another woman trample all over our life just to watch me lose control, to watch me fight, to force me to prove that I loved him. But it was not that I did not care. I cared too much. That is why I had given him the dignity of my silence, time and time again. I looked up at him. Caleb, is what she said true? His eyes were full of panic. Eleanor, I never wanted her to hurt you. I am asking if you used her to test me. He fell silent. The answer, once again, was clear. I nodded. Fine. I picked up my pen and added a final clause to my divorce settlement document. Fifth, Caleb Preston admits to long-term negligence in maintaining marital boundaries with a subordinate, leading to the irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. Caleb's face went white. Eleanor. I put the pen down. Sign it or do not. Your choice. Margaret was furious. He will not sign it. Eleanor, do not forget. You have lived in the Preston penthouse for 3 years, eaten the Preston's food, and now you want to bite the hand that fed you? I looked at her. Mom, I ate the Preston's food? I opened the ledger to the last page. For the past 3 years, my personal account has transferred an average of $20,000 a month to the estate's operating budget. The living allowance Caleb gave me? I never touched a cent of it. It is all in our joint account at Chase. You say I ate the Preston's food? Fine. Let us calculate every utility bill, every meal, every medication cost, every staff salary, and every gift, and see who is in debt to whom. Margaret was speechless. Chloe started crying again. Mrs. Preston, do you have to be so aggressive? I looked at her coldly. Chloe, if I were truly being aggressive, you would not be sitting here right now. She was startled into silence. Caleb's brow was furrowed, his voice hoarse. Eleanor, I will take care of these accounts. But the divorce? Can we just slow down? No, I said. Why? I looked at him. Because I no longer want to sit at a table where I could be slapped at any moment, waiting for you to decide who is the more pitiable victim. The life seemed to drain from his face. The meeting ended without a resolution. Margaret refused to pay, Chloe refused to apologize, and Caleb refused the divorce. I was not surprised. I gathered my legal documents and stood to leave. As I reached the door, a commotion erupted behind me. Margaret! Mom! I turned around. Margaret was clutching her stomach, her face pale as she slumped in her chair. Chloe was the first to rush over. Aunt Margaret, what is wrong? Was it Mrs. Preston? Did she upset you? With that one line, all eyes turned back to me. I stood at the door, motionless. Caleb lifted his mother into his arms, his voice urgent. Eleanor, where is Mom's medication? I looked at him. How absurd. When they were forcing me to leave with nothing, they remembered I was not a Preston. Now that his mother was sick, they remembered I was the one who managed her medication. In the family group chat files, I said calmly. I posted it 3 times. Caleb froze. Chloe cried out, What time is it for this? How can you still be so petty? I looked at her. Miss Chloe, did you not say you wanted to learn the Preston family's rules? I turned and walked out. Start by learning how to find the medication. Margaret was taken to Greenwich Hospital. Caleb still called me. When I answered, his voice was low. Eleanor, Mom is in the emergency room. I know. The doctor is asking what she ate recently. Chloe cannot explain. I stood at the entrance of the hospital, looking up at the ER building. I am here. There was a distinct pause on the other end. I had not come back out of soft-heartedness to be a caretaker. I had come to clearly define my responsibilities. Outside the emergency room, the Prestons were gathered in a worried huddle. Chloe stood next to Caleb, her face ashen. When she saw me, she immediately started crying. Mrs. Preston, I really did not know Aunt Margaret could not eat spicy food. You were in charge of all this before, why did you not tell me? Before I could speak, Uncle Ben's wife frowned. Eleanor, you really should have been clearer with the handover. No matter what legal arguments you are having, you cannot joke with an elder's health. I looked at her. Are you sure I did not make it clear? She was taken aback. I took out my phone and opened the Preston family group chat files. 3 months ago, the first time Chloe had accompanied Margaret to the estate for dinner, I had posted a PDF document titled Estate Dietary Restrictions and Medication List. I handed my phone to the attending doctor. Margaret Preston has chronic gastritis. She must avoid spicy food, alcohol, and rich sauces. Her emergency medication is in the first floor east wing drawer at the estate. Her Mount Sinai patient ID is also on that list. The doctor took the phone, glanced at it, and nodded. This is very detailed. Chloe's face grew even paler. I continued, tapping on the text history. The day I sent that list, Margaret had replied with a curt, troublesome. Caleb had replied with, got it. And Chloe had also replied. She had sent, thank you, Mrs. Preston. I will remember this. I looked at her. Did you remember? Chloe's lips trembled. I was so busy then at the office. I opened another photo. It was a picture of the list of dietary restrictions taped to the Sub-Zero refrigerator in the estate's kitchen. Arthur had sent it to me. It was there yesterday. Today it was gone. Arthur, standing in the back of the group, spoke up immediately. It was Miss Chloe. This morning, she said it looked untidy and had the cleaning staff tear it down. Chloe hastily defended herself. I just wanted the kitchen to look cleaner for the guests. I looked at her. So you tore down the list of what she cannot eat, and then you ordered her a spicy Cajun shrimp? Caleb closed his eyes. He turned to Chloe. Who ordered the Cajun shrimp? Chloe's tears fell even faster. Aunt Margaret said she wanted something flavorful. I did not know. I really did not mean to. Not meaning to does not mean you are not responsible, I said. The doctor came out of the ER. The patient is stable. It was acute gastritis, likely triggered by her diet. The family needs to be more careful in the future. Caleb let out a breath of relief. When Margaret was wheeled out, her face was gray. She saw me, her gaze complicated for a moment. Then she quickly looked away. What are you doing here? I am here to prove I did not poison you, I said. She was at a loss for words. Chloe knelt by the bedside, sobbing. Aunt Margaret, I am so sorry, it is all my fault. Margaret was always a sucker for this. She weakly patted Chloe's hand. It is not your fault. You are not family. It is normal that you would not know. I let out a small laugh. That is a funny thing to say. If it is normal for a non-family member not to know, then what right did she have to slap me and say I had no class? I did not argue further. I took a printed copy of a care transition checklist from my bag. This is my mother-in-law's daily medication schedule, dietary restrictions, follow-up appointment times, and her primary care doctor's phone number. I have printed 3 copies, one for Caleb, one for the home care nurse you will hire, and one for Arthur. Caleb reached out for it. I did not hand it to him. I placed it on the nearby bedside table. From today on, I am no longer responsible for your mother's care. You can hire a professional agency, or you can let Miss Chloe continue to play the devoted daughter. Margaret immediately grew agitated. Eleanor, what do you mean by that? I am not dead yet, and you are already washing your hands of me? I looked at her. Mom, you just said it yourself. Miss Chloe is not family, so it is normal she does not know. I paused. Soon I will not be family either. Her face stiffened. Caleb's voice was low. Eleanor, do not say things like that in a hospital. I turned to him. Then where should I say them? At the family dinner, you would not let me speak. At the memorial, you would not let me in. At the family meeting, you wanted me to leave with nothing. The hospital is the quietest place we have had so far. He was silenced by my words. At the doorway of the hospital room, the gazes of the other relatives had started to change. The first to speak was our cousin, the widow, who rarely spoke. Eleanor was always very meticulous, she said softly. Last year, when I could not drink at the gala, she was the one who arranged for a separate pot of herbal tea for me. Uncle Stephen also cleared his throat. That time my blood sugar dropped on the golf course. It was also Eleanor who had the clubhouse prepare juice for me. Uncle Ben looked at Margaret. Sister-in-law, all this time, we thought you were the one arranging these things. Margaret's face was a mask of humiliation. She tried to speak, but another wave of pain stopped her. Chloe suddenly stood up, swaying slightly. I know that no matter what I do, I will never be as good as Mrs. Preston. I just wanted to help Caleb with his corporate burden. I am not as good at winning people over as she is. I looked at her. Chloe, caring for an elder is not winning people over. I picked up the care checklist. It is remembering what they cannot eat. It is staying with them through the night at the ER. It is not talking back when they are in a bad mood. And when the next day they turn around and say you are not doing enough, it is still laying out their medication correctly. I put the checklist back on the table. If you want to take over these responsibilities, be my guest. Chloe's tears stopped. Caleb looked at me, and for the first time, there was a clear, sharp pain in his eyes. Eleanor, these 3 years, why did you never say you were tired? Because I did. You just did not listen. He looked as if he had been frozen in place. As I left the hospital, Caleb followed me to the parking garage elevator. I will drive you. No need. Eleanor, his voice was hoarse. Can you please just come home? Even for a few days. Mom is like this. The house is in chaos. I looked at him. Caleb, are you still trying to get me to come back and clean up the mess? He quickly tried to correct himself. No, I just thought, you thought I would go back to being the way I was. Lay out the medication, placate the relatives, soothe your mother's ego, and clean up the disaster Chloe created. I pressed the elevator button, and then wait for the next time she stands up and says, I have no class. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. Caleb stood outside and suddenly whispered, I was wrong. It was the first time he had said those 3 words. But it felt too late. I looked at him. You were not wrong today. The elevator doors began to close. I said my last sentence to him. You were wrong because you thought I would never leave. I moved into the small Brooklyn Heights apartment my mother had left me. It was not large, just a 1-bedroom with a living room, but the window looked out onto a row of elm trees. There was no Preston family mahogany here, no sudden calls from my mother-in-law, and no Caleb coming home late at night, his coat smelling of a mixture of expensive bourbon and someone else's perfume. The first night, I slept for 8 solid hours. When I woke up, the sunlight was streaming onto the corner of my bed. I suddenly realized that when you are not waiting for someone to come home, even breathing feels lighter. At 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. It was Caleb. He was wearing the same black overcoat from yesterday, with faint dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he had not slept. I opened the door but did not let him in. What is it? He was holding a paper bag from a local pharmacy. Your face? You need to change the dressing. I glanced at it. It is fine now. Let me just see, he said in a low voice. It is not convenient. His fingers stiffened. Before, he could enter my space freely. Now, he needed permission just to cross the threshold. The change clearly unsettled him. Eleanor, can we talk? Downstairs at the coffee shop, I said. He glanced into the apartment. It had once been a part of our shared life. I had lived there for a period before our wedding. Now, he was not allowed inside. 10 minutes later, we were sitting at a window table in the coffee shop. I ordered a glass of warm water. Caleb did not get anything. He placed a legal folder on the table. I have reviewed the accounts. I will have the corporate finance team arrange for the repayment of what is owed. I nodded. Good. He looked at me. As for Mom, I will persuade her. Not persuade, repay. He closed his eyes. Fine, repay. I took out another document. This is the revised divorce agreement. You should look it over. His face changed. Eleanor, I did not come here to talk about this. I did. He stared at the document, the veins on the back of his hand standing out. Do you have to do this? Do what? I asked. Push everything towards a divorce? I looked at him, and the absurdity of it all struck me. Caleb, your assistant slapped me. Your mother tried to make me leave with nothing. You used another woman to test me. Your entire family refuses to acknowledge the debts they owe me. And now you are saying I am the one pushing for a divorce? His voice was low. I admit I handled it terribly, but I never thought about divorce. Because divorce would impact you, I said. Enduring it was my pain. His face paled. After a long silence, he finally spoke. I was wrong about Chloe. When she first started, her work was excellent, and she was very emotionally expressive. You know, for years, when I came home to Tribeca, you always seemed so calm. No matter how late I was, you would just ask if I had eaten. No matter what charity event I went to, you never argued or got upset. He gave a bitter smile. Sometimes, I would wonder if you even loved me anymore. I looked at him. So you brought another woman into our lives to test that for you? He clenched his fist. I did not think it would get this serious. Of course you did not, I said. You just enjoyed her making you the center of her world. You enjoyed watching me finally lose control after being provoked. You enjoyed seeing two women fighting over you at the same table. He looked up sharply. I am not that kind of person. Then what kind of person are you? He could not answer. I answered for him. You are the kind of person who thinks that as long as you are not physically cheating, any emotional affair is forgivable. You are the kind of person who thinks that as long as you do not say the hurtful words yourself, allowing others to hurt me is not your fault. You are the kind of person who mistakes his wife's silence for coldness, and her dignity for indifference. The color drained from Caleb's face. I pushed the divorce agreement forward. Sign it. He stared at it. I will not sign. I was not surprised. Then we will go through the New York courts. A flash of panic crossed his eyes. Eleanor, are you really not going to give me a single chance? I looked down at my own hands. My ring finger was bare, but a faint, pale line remained the mark of a 3-year marriage. It would not disappear overnight. But pain and regret did not mean I had to go back. I looked up. Caleb, do you know when I completely gave up on giving you a chance? He looked at me. It was not when Chloe slapped me. His breathing hitched. It was when you asked me why I hit her, instead of asking me if I was in pain. When those words landed, his eyes actually reddened. But I was no longer moved by his tears. I stood up. I will send you the appointment for the mandatory mediation session. If you do not show up, my attorney will file the lawsuit. I had just stepped out of the coffee shop when my phone vibrated. The family group chat had exploded again. Chloe had posted a screenshot of a $30,000 wire transfer from Margaret to me. Her caption read, "So Mrs. Preston's so-called sacrifices were not for free after all. To take the money and still play the victim, she is quite the actress." The group chat instantly lit up. Some asked what was going on. Others commented that it was no wonder I was so aggressive about the accounts, since I was taking money myself. I stopped on the sidewalk. Caleb, who had followed me out, saw the message too. His face darkened, and he immediately started to call Chloe. I put my hand on his phone. Do not bother. He looked at me. I opened my photo album. I had a complete banking record of that $30,000. On the same day it was transferred in, I had made 3 separate wire transfers out. One to Margaret's private concierge physician, one for masonry repairs at the estate, and one for Uncle Stephen's child's private school tuition. The transfer memos were perfectly clear. The money from Margaret was not a bribe. It was funds for me to disburse on her behalf. Chloe had only screenshotted the first part of the transaction. I posted the complete banking record in the group chat, attaching the 3 screenshots of the outgoing wire transfers. Then I typed, "Miss Chloe, before you take things out of context, make sure you have read the entire ledger." The group chat went silent for about 10 seconds. Uncle Ben was the first to reply. "I know about this money. Eleanor transferred the prep school tuition fee for Stephen's kid." Our cousin also replied. Eleanor was the one who contacted the specialist doctor that day too. Chloe said nothing more. Caleb looked at the group chat, his expression grim. How did she get that screenshot? I looked at him. "You should ask your mother." His face fell completely. I put my phone away. "You see, Caleb? After leaving you, I do not have to explain my feelings. I just have to explain the accounts," he said in a low voice. "I will handle her." I shook my head. "No." He looked at me. "This time," I said, "I will handle it myself." The Prestons had not planned on inviting me to Uncle Ben's birthday dinner, but he called me personally. "Eleanor, please come," he said. "Some accounts really need to be settled in person." I knew he was not entirely on my side. He had simply seen the cracks forming within the family. But that was enough. I did not need anyone to back me up. I just needed them to be willing to look at the evidence. The dinner was at the Greenwich estate. This time, Uncle Ben sat at the head of the table. Margaret looked displeased, but did not dare say anything. Chloe was there, dressed very discreetly, standing behind Caleb as if she had learned her lesson. But I knew she would not give up that easily. When I walked in, all eyes were on me. I was not wearing a gala gown, just a simple black dress, and I was carrying an old leather satchel. Inside was the complete physical ledger. When Chloe saw the bag, her fingers visibly flinched. The dinner had barely begun when Margaret raised her crystal glass. "Today is your Uncle Ben's birthday. No one is to cause any trouble." She was looking at me when she said it. Before I could respond, Uncle Ben put his glass down. "Sister-in-law, there will be no trouble today, but the accounts must be settled." Margaret's face tightened. Uncle Ben looked at me. "Eleanor, bring out the documents you mentioned." I nodded. I laid out the files, one by one. No projector, no corporate presentation. Just paper, bank transfer records, and handwritten receipts. Sometimes, the quietest evidence is the most frightening. I started with the list of loans to relatives. Who borrowed how much, when they borrowed it, who said they would repay it, and whether they had. Uncle Ben's wife blushed. "We really did not know it was your personal money," she whispered. "I will pay back half of that $30,000 next week." Uncle Stephen's family followed suit. We acknowledged the tuition money. The atmosphere began to shift. Before, they thought I was being petty by bringing up old debts. Now that they saw every single transaction was accounted for, they started to fear being seen as the ones taking advantage. Next, I brought out the records of Margaret's private withdrawals. She could not stand it. "Eleanor, must you humiliate me on this day?" I looked at her. "Mom, when you tried to make me leave with nothing, you were not worried about my humiliation." She was left speechless. I displayed the text log about the cousin's gown. This $12,600 was actually used to pay for Chloe's Met Gala dress. Chloe immediately looked up. "I did not know it was Mrs. Preston's money." I nodded. "Then, whose money did you think it was?" She could not answer. I continued. "You did not know where the money came from, yet you wore the dress to be photographed next to my husband. You did not know the Preston family rules, yet you dared to slap me at a family dinner. You did not know my mother-in-law's dietary restrictions, yet you dared to take over her care. Chloe, is your life just a series of I did not knows, with everyone else left to take responsibility?" Someone let out a stifled laugh. Chloe's face flushed a deep red. Caleb said in a low voice, "Chloe, apologize." She shot him a look. "Caleb, apologize." His voice was firmer. Tears welled in Chloe's eyes. "Mrs. Preston, I am sorry." I looked at her. "For what?" Her lips trembled. I listed them off, one by one. "For slapping me? For inflating the procurement costs? For taking my words out of context to slander me? For tearing down the dietary restriction list? Or for blocking my way at the door of the family's memorial library?" She was crying too hard to speak. Uncle Ben frowned. "The inflated catering procurement matter should be clarified today as well." I produced the supplier's handwritten receipt. Arthur stood up. "The estate has always used a list of approved vendors. After Miss Chloe changed suppliers, the prices of several items became ridiculously high. The main lobster bisque was replaced with cheap crawfish chowder. The caviar order was half the specified amount, and the wine was not the vintage that was ordered." Uncle Ben looked at Chloe. "Whose account did the difference go into?" Chloe shook her head. "I did not. I was just holding it temporarily." I pushed the receipt for the private bank account deposit across the table. "The payee is you." This time, even her crying froze. Caleb picked up the receipt, his face dangerously cold. "Chloe, explain." She grabbed his sleeve. "Caleb, I was just borrowing it temporarily. My family had a financial emergency. I was going to pay it back. I did not mean to defraud the family." Uncle Ben scoffed. "You were not defrauding the family. You were defrauding Eleanor, because you knew she was the one who always settled the final bill. You knew the difference would ultimately come out of her pocket." His words hit the mark. Chloe lowered her head, her shoulders shaking. I felt no triumph, only a deep sense of irony. So they all knew I was the one who paid. They just never said it. Now that there was trouble, they finally admitted it. Margaret still tried to protect her. "Chloe is young. She made a mistake. It is just a few $1,000s. I looked at Margaret. "Then you can pay it back for her." Margaret immediately shut her mouth. Uncle Ben slammed the receipt on the table. Sister-in-law, a few $1,000s is not the issue. If she dares to mess with the dinner procurement today, she will dare to mess with the foundation memorial funds tomorrow. Is this the kind of person you want to bring into this family? Margaret's face was grim. Suddenly, Chloe broke down. You are all blaming me now, but were you not the ones who wanted me here in the first place? She looked sharply at Caleb. Caleb, you were the one who said Mrs. Preston was too cold, that she did not know how to care for you. You were the one who told me to spend more time with Aunt Margaret, to learn more about the family's affairs. You were the one who said Mrs. Preston would not care. Caleb's face went white. I never told you to cross the line to this extent. But you never stopped me, Chloe shrieked. I answered your phone. You did not say no. I went shopping on Fifth Avenue with your mother. You did not say no. I came to the estate for dinner. You did not say no. The night of the dinner, when I stepped up, you did not defend her immediately. When that last sentence fell, the entire room went dead silent. All eyes turned to Caleb. His face slowly turned ashen. I sat there watching him calmly. This was the real accounting. It was not about money. It was about complicity. Caleb looked at me, his lips moving. Eleanor, I did not. Chloe's makeup was ruined by her tears. You are all throwing me under the bus now, just because she brought out the ledger. If she had not checked the accounts, you would still be letting me sit here, still letting me handle things for Caleb. Her words were desperate, but they were also true. Margaret looked like she was about to faint. Uncle Ben looked at Caleb, his voice heavy. Caleb, you owe Eleanor an explanation for this. Caleb closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he looked at Chloe. From today on, you will no longer be involved in any of my personal affairs. Human resources will handle your position at the company. The money you took needs to be repaid within 3 days. Chloe looked as if the bones had been pulled from her body. Caleb, you cannot do this to me. Caleb did not look at her again. He turned to me. Eleanor, I am sorry. This was his second apology, this time in front of everyone. But my heart felt nothing. I gathered my documents. I accept your apology. A flicker of hope lit his eyes. But I still expect you to sign the divorce papers as soon as possible, I continued. The hope was extinguished. After the dinner, Caleb kept Chloe in the main hall. I was about to leave when Uncle Ben stopped me. Eleanor, stay and listen to the end. I knew what he meant. This was not just about Chloe. If Caleb did not clarify things in front of everyone, the family would eventually find a way to shift the blame back onto a misguided assistant. I sat back down. Only the core family members remained. Chloe stood in the center of the room, her face pale. Margaret tried to speak, but Uncle Ben cut her off. Sister-in-law, you stay out of this one. Margaret trembled with anger but did not argue. Caleb looked at Chloe. From the moment you started at Preston Industries, did I not make it clear to you that Eleanor is my wife and that you were not to interfere in our family's affairs? Chloe sobbed. You did, but what? But you also said she did not care about these things. Caleb's expression froze. I sat nearby, my finger tracing the rim of my glass. Chloe, as if throwing caution to the wind, let it all out. You said she would not get angry over a phone call, that she would not be jealous if I accompanied you to a corporate event. You said she was always so calm, the same with everyone. You said that if she really cared, she would react eventually. Caleb's face was deathly white. Margaret could not help but ask, Caleb, did you really say that? He did not answer. His silence was an admission. Uncle Ben scoffed. You are a grown man in your 30s, the CEO of a major firm, and you use methods like this to test your wife? Caleb's voice was low. I did not think it would turn out like this. I suddenly spoke. You did not think, because you never considered my pain a possible consequence. Everyone looked at me. I met Caleb's gaze. You thought Chloe answering my calls was a small thing. Her accompanying you to galas was work. Her buying clothes for your mother was being thoughtful. Her coming to the estate for dinner made things lively. Her arranging the seating was just helping out. I paused. It was not until she hit me that you realized things had gone too far. Caleb's throat worked. I am sorry. I shook my head. Caleb, I am sorry is not an eraser for the past. Chloe suddenly looked up, her voice sharp. And what about me? Am I just a tool for you to use and then discard? Caleb, if you had never let me get close in the first place, how could I have misunderstood? She said it with a face full of resentment. I looked at her. She was by no means innocent, but she was right about one thing. The person who crosses a boundary is despicable, but the person who opens the door for them is even worse. Caleb looked at her, and after a long silence, said, "I will take responsibility for my part." But slapping her, slandering her, and embezzling funds, those were your choices. Chloe collapsed into a chair. "I just wanted to be by your side." "So you hit me," I said coldly. She looked at me, hatred in her eyes. "If you were not always holding on to the position of Mrs. Preston." I stood up. This time, I did not raise my hand. I just walked over to her. At the dinner, she had been standing in this exact spot when she slapped me. I looked at her. "Chloe, say what you said that night again." She froze. "You said I had no class, did you not?" "Say it again, now, in front of the whole family." Her lips trembled, but she could not get a single word out. "You are scared to say it," I continued, "because you finally understand that rules are not decided by who has the loudest voice or who cries the hardest." I pointed to the head of the table. That position. I sat there because I carried its responsibilities. If you want it, fine. First, carry the weight of 3 years of accounting, 3 years of medication schedules, 3 years of family dinners, and 3 years of silent suffering. Chloe completely broke down. "I do not want it." "Who wants it?" "Good," I nodded. I took 2 legal documents from my satchel. "This is a defamation complaint prepared by my attorney. Your social media posts, your messages in the group chat, I have saved them all." Chloe's head shot up. "You are going to sue me?" "Yes. But you hit me too." "I admit I retaliated," I said, looking at her. "But you struck first." There were over a dozen witnesses in the room. Arthur, the staff, the relatives. "We can let the judge in civil court decide how to interpret that." She panicked and turned to Caleb. "Caleb, help me." Caleb did not respond. I took out another document. "This is a formal civil complaint for physical assault. I have photos of the injury to my face and the records from my urgent care visit. You can continue to say I am overreacting." Chloe's voice trembled. "It was just one slap." "Yes," I said, looking at her. "Just one slap." I placed the documents in front of her. "But this was the slap you wanted everyone to see. And it is also a slap for everyone who has ever been forced to endure in silence." No one in the room spoke. Uncle Ben slowly nodded. "This should go through the proper legal channels." Margaret grew anxious. "If this gets out to the press, what will happen to the family's corporate reputation?" I turned to her. "Mom, our family's reputation was not ruined by me." I looked at Caleb. "It was ruined by your complicity." Caleb's face was ashen. Chloe finally broke, burying her head in her hands. "I will apologize," she sobbed. "I will pay the money. Just please do not sue me." I did not answer immediately. A written apology, financial compensation, deletion of all slanderous content, and a public clarification in the family group chat. "As for whether I file the lawsuit, that depends on your attitude." She nodded frantically. "I will write it. I will write it right now." I pushed a pen and paper towards her. Chloe's hand was shaking so much she could barely hold the pen. She wrote the first sentence. "I, Chloe, on the occasion of the Preston family dinner, physically assaulted Mrs. Eleanor Preston." At that point, her tears splattered onto the page. I felt no pity. She was not crying because she regretted hurting me. She was crying because she finally had to face the consequences. When she finished, I took the apology letter. Caleb came to my side. "Eleanor, I will handle her and Mom from now on. Can you please?" I knew what he was going to say. I cut him off. "No." Pain flashed in his eyes. Margaret suddenly sneered. "Eleanor, do not think a few pieces of paper absolve you of everything. The keys to the estate are still in your possession. The ledger is still with you. As long as you do not hand them over, you are still a Preston." I looked at her. "Are you sure you want me to hand them over now?" "Of course," she said. "Fine," I nodded. I took a ring of keys from my satchel. The main security gate, the management office, the medicine cabinet, the wine cellar, the library. I had tied a different colored string to each one. For 3 years, I had moved through this massive house with these keys. Now they felt like a heavy set of chains. I placed the keys on the table. "Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., at the front gate, I will conduct the official handover." Margaret was taken aback. She probably never thought I would actually agree. I looked at her. "I will return the keys. I will return the rules." I paused. "But you will also have to return the money." The next morning at 10 a.m., I arrived at the Connecticut estate on time. A number of people were standing at the front driveway. Margaret, Uncle Ben, Arthur, two of the house staff, and Caleb. Chloe was not there. I heard she had moved out of the corporate apartment Caleb had arranged for her overnight. HR had suspended her and opened a formal investigation. She had posted an apology in the family group chat. The wording was very formal, not her usual style. I knew Caleb's corporate lawyers had probably drafted it. It did not matter. I did not need her to be remorseful. I just needed her to stop playing the innocent victim. I had walked up the stone steps of the estate countless times. The first time I came here, Grandmother Catherine had held my hand and said, "From now on, this is your home too." Today, I stood in the same spot and took the keys off the ring, one by one. The key to the main gate. I placed it on the silver tray. The key to the management office. The second one. The key to the medicine cabinet. The third. The key to the wine cellar. The fourth. The key to the library. The fifth. The last one was a small brass key Grandmother Catherine had given me. It opened an old cabinet of hers, where the family's oldest tax ledgers and the house rules she had written for me were kept. I caressed its edge for a moment, then placed it down. Margaret looked at the tray, her expression a mixture of emotions. She wanted to take it, but seemed hesitant. I handed a handover checklist to Uncle Ben. "I will have the original ledger sealed and entrusted to you and Arthur for joint custody. I will keep a digital copy for the upcoming debt recovery process. The inventory of medications and the list of social and charity obligations are all detailed on this list." Uncle Ben took it and sighed. "Eleanor, you have been very thorough." "It is the last time," I said. Arthur stood nearby, his eyes red. "Mrs. Preston, I am resigning too." Margaret shot him a sharp look. "Arthur, what do you mean?" Arthur took off his blazer. "Ma'am, I am getting old. I cannot keep up anymore. From now on, you will have to find someone else to manage the estate." "You are leaving at a time like this? You are just adding to the chaos," Margaret said, agitated. Arthur gave a bitter smile. "Before, Mrs. Preston arranged everything, and I just followed her instructions. Now that she is gone, I do not know who to listen to. Yesterday, Miss Chloe told me to tear down the dietary list. Today you are telling me to reorganize the ledgers. I am afraid I will make a mistake and be held legally responsible." His words were polite, but direct. Margaret's face flushed. Caleb said in a low voice, "Arthur, I will arrange for an agency to handle the transition." Arthur looked at him. "Sir, you should have arranged for that a long time ago." That one sentence silenced Caleb. I handed the last legal document to Margaret. "This is a detailed list of the funds to be returned from your account. The attorney's letter will be delivered by courier this afternoon." Margaret's hand trembled with rage. "Eleanor, I am your mother-in-law." I looked at her, not for much longer. Her face went white. "Are you really going to be this ruthless?" I did not answer immediately. I looked at the old house. It had once held all my hopes for marriage. Here I had celebrated Grandmother Catherine's last birthday. Here I had made Caleb hangover remedies after his Wall Street dinners. Here I had shielded my mother-in-law from the criticisms of relatives. And here I had been slapped by an assistant. I turned my gaze back to her. "Mom, I was not the one who was ruthless. You were the ones who blocked all my escape routes. You just did not expect me to know how to climb over the wall." Uncle Ben could not suppress a cough. Margaret looked even more mortified. Just then, a distant relative hurried over. "Sister-in-law, I am wiring $5,000 of my loan today. I will get the rest by the end of the month. Eleanor, please do not put my name on the attorney's letter." Immediately after, Uncle Ben's wife also arrived, holding up a screenshot of a Chase transfer. "I have wired $10,000. The rest will be paid next month." Before, when they borrowed money, they all said, "We are family. No rush." Now that they knew I was going through legal channels, they were the ones in a hurry. Margaret stood at the door, her face a shifting canvas of white and green. In the past, these relatives had flocked to her because she could do them favors with my money. Now that I was no longer paying, the favors had dried up. Caleb had been standing silently to the side. When the crowd dispersed, he finally walked over to me. "I have reviewed the divorce agreement." I looked up. "Will you sign?" His gaze was deep. "Yes." I was not surprised, nor did I feel a sense of relief. I just nodded. 3 p.m. At my attorney's office in Midtown Manhattan. "Do you have to be so quick?" he asked in a low voice. 3 years was already very slow, I replied. The words seemed to pierce him. He closed his eyes. Eleanor, I only know now how much you did for this family. I looked at him. Caleb, you did not just find out now. He froze. You just realize now that there is no one left to do it for you. His face went completely gray. At 3 p.m., in the Manhattan attorney's office, Caleb signed the divorce agreement. The tip of his pen hovered over the signature line for a long time. I did not rush him. Finally, he wrote his name. Caleb Preston. The 3 words, written stroke by stroke, felt like a final seal on the past. I took the agreement and confirmed everything was in order. The attorney explained the next steps for filing in New York State, the mandatory waiting period, and the final appearance before the judge to receive the final divorce decree. I nodded. When I walked out of the high-rise office building, the sky was overcast. Caleb stood beside me and suddenly said, "During these next few weeks, can I still see you?" I looked straight ahead. Regarding the divorce proceedings, yes. And for other things? I did not answer. He gave a bitter smile. I understand. Before we parted, he called my name. Eleanor, if that night, at the dinner, if I had defended you right away, would you still have left? He had asked the question too late. I turned to look at him. Yes, a little later. A flicker of light appeared in his eyes. But I would have still left, I added. Because that slap was not the beginning. It was the last thread snapping. On the final day of the waiting period, Caleb arrived at the county courthouse early. When I got there, he was standing at the entrance in a black suit, holding a file folder. He had lost weight. The past month had been chaotic for the Prestons. Relatives had started repaying their debts, which had caused a complete rupture with Margaret. After losing my financial support, Margaret discovered just how high the estate's real monthly expenses were. The new estate manager she hired quit after less than 10 days, citing the family's complex rules, Margaret's temper, and the messy finances as reasons no one was willing to take on the liability. Chloe had paid the money, issued her apology, and left Preston Industries. She later sent me one last text. "Mrs. Preston, I truly know I was wrong now." I did not reply. Some apologies are said to reduce one's own sentence, not for the victim to hear. Caleb saw me approaching. "Did you have breakfast?" "Yes," I said. He nodded, and we fell silent again. In the past, we often had silences between us. But then, it was me waiting for him to speak. Now, it was me no longer giving him an entry point. Before we went into the courtroom, he handed me a cashier's check. "This is the first installment of Mom's repayment. The rest will follow the agreement." I took it. "Thank you." He smiled bitterly. "You are so polite with me now." "As I should be," I said. The light in his eyes dimmed. While we were waiting in the hall, he said in a low voice, "Eleanor, I went back to the Connecticut estate the other day. I did not ask." He continued on his own. I sat in the dining room and saw the empty head seat. Arthur was gone, the kitchen was a mess, Mom was losing her temper, and relatives were calling to complain about debts. It was only then that I realized the house did not just run itself all those years. You were the one holding it all up. I looked at the mahogany double doors of the courtroom. It was not our turn yet. Caleb continued, "I used to think you were too cold. Now I know you were just channeling all your emotions into solving problems." His words stirred something in me. Not because I was moved, but because his long overdue understanding had finally landed. But it could not change anything. "Caleb," I said, saying his name with intention for the first time in a long while. He looked at me. I was not born calm. His eyes reddened slightly. "I waited for you too," I continued. "I waited for you to explain yourself after your corporate galas. I waited for you to notice your mother was making things difficult for me. I waited for you to keep Chloe on the other side of the boundary. I waited for you at that dinner to ask me first if I was in pain." I paused. But what I got was you asking me why I hit her. Tears almost fell from his eyes. "I am sorry." I nodded. "I accept." He looked up sharply. "But I am not coming back," I finished. In that instant, the light in his eyes completely shattered. The bailiff called our case. We walked in together. The judge confirmed our information and asked if we were divorcing voluntarily. Caleb was silent for a long moment. I spoke first. "Voluntarily." He closed his eyes. "Voluntarily." Our marriage license was legally dissolved, and 2 copies of the final divorce decree were handed to us. I put mine in my bag. My fingers brushed against the ring inside. I had not returned it to him. Not because I could not let go, but because I planned to have it melted down and remade into a simple band, engraved with my own name. When we walked out of the courthouse, the New York sun was shining brightly. Caleb stood on the steps and suddenly asked, "Eleanor, do you still hate me?" I thought for a moment. No. His eyes brightened slightly. "Hate is also a connection," I said. "I do not want any more connections with you." The words were crueler than hate. He stood there, unable to say another word. Later, I heard that the Preston estate finally hired a professional management firm. All expenses went through a transparent corporate account. Margaret could no longer use her position as matriarch to demand private funds. The relatives also learned to sign promissory notes when they borrowed money. Uncle Ben had the old leather-bound ledger sealed and stored in the estate's archives. He said it was the most expensive lesson the Preston family had learned in years. As for Caleb, he did not remarry, at least not for a very long time. People said he became more withdrawn, that at family dinners, he would instinctively glance at the head of the table. But I was no longer there. And me? I moved permanently into my Brooklyn Heights apartment. I started taking on freelance work again, consulting for tech firms. I redecorated the place my mother had left me. When the elm trees outside my window grew new leaves, I invited Arthur over for a meal. He looked at my bare ring finger and smiled. "This is much better." I smiled back. "Yes, it is." After dinner, I took the old diamond wedding ring to a jeweler in Manhattan. The clerk asked me what style I wanted it melted into. "A simple gold band," I said. "Any engraving?" I thought for a moment. "Engrave Eleanor." He looked up. "Just the name?" I nodded. "Just my name." A month later, the band was ready. I wore it on the middle finger of my right hand. It did not represent a marriage, or someone else's promise, or the position of Mrs. Preston. It was a reminder of just one thing. The head of the table was never a chair. It was a person finally understanding that she should no longer make way for anyone else's rules.